What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the well-read retard here, and we are back with episode 137, I believe. Honest to God, I sat here for 10 minutes trying to think of a better name than that, but sometimes you get the bottom of the barrel. That's just kind of how things roll. I'll be honest in saying I feel pretty awful today physically. My body's not cooperating, but the show goes on. So hopefully it's not too apparent that I feel bad, but I'll try to get through something. Figured I could at least accomplish, whatever the fuck this is. If you could even call this an accomplishment, but some days, some days is all you get. Anyway, yeah, the first thing I was thinking of, and I don't know why, and maybe I'm just not. By the way, I'm gonna be a little closer to my mic today, and I turned up the input gain, so if it is a little bit too loud, then I guess I'll adjust that next time. But, I got to try some things. Because I never really tell. Like, I can listen to the recording back on OBS or after or something like that, but I never really know if things are too loud until they get... Like, I don't know until I've heard how loud other stuff is on YouTube. That's kind of how I need to measure things. And I was also thinking I need to probably plan an escape route at some point, or at least something off of YouTube. I posted some videos to Odyssey a long time ago, but I don't post these anywhere else, and I don't know. Maybe it's worth doing that, because if they really do follow through with this age verification nonsense, I'm probably gonna have to peace out of YouTube, or at the very least, I can't. My stuff will get, I don't know. I mean, maybe they just don't pay that much attention until you have some kind of a following. Which I would think if you're trying to stomp out, the true Nazis, you probably want to look local and look small, especially people looking for. People with ridiculous ideas looking for small, other people with ridiculous ideas. It's generally not views in the hundreds of thousands. These are just, very fringe groups that, are going to be the beginning of, eventually the larger groups you have to stomp out. So you might want to look for smaller things if you are, if they really are concerned with, hate speech or whatever. So I don't know, but we'll see how it all goes. My first topic is about what I just kind of call is highly responsible drug use. And I'm also, drugs is kind of hard to call everything a drug, because it's like, drugs and medicine, or there's like overlap there. Can't always tell. And then like, alcohol is a liquid. Is that really a drug? Like, it's not really fair. I guess that's kind of a drug, but it's not like most people think of like something you inject or smoke, or a pill you take, or something to do with a syringe. Those are drugs, whereas alcohol is just like a beverage, but they're like, lean is technically also a beverage, but it's still very much, not, probably in drug territory, I'd say. But just the word drug itself doesn't really mean that much. So I'm kind of very hesitant to say that. But in general, maybe it's just, you know when you see it. Drug use is drug use. But the topic of highly responsible drug use, the percentage, maybe not percentage, but just the sheer number of, anecdotal people that I know that have, otherwise, like, if you wanted to tally up their external, their daily, like, their societal, like, how much are they conforming to their societal norms? It's like they're doing great. Maybe they're high up at this company, or, they're making a lot of money, they're doing something good. Maybe they have their own company. Maybe it's a construction gig, whatever. But then, like, on the same side, they're also just like, unabashedly just addicts. Like, they're just drug users in like the most unabashed, unashamed way possible. It's like, if that's not an alcoholic, I genuinely don't know what, how much worse it would have to get before you could call them an alcoholic. I don't know what else that is, because that seems like pretty rampant use to me. But the fact of the matter is, you can't really say shit, because it's like, what? Like, you can't say, oh, you're hurting your career and your fan. It's like, no, they're, by all other accounts, like, they're checking all the boxes. Nobody's mad at their societal output. And, it's one of those things that's like, well, you can't be mad. They're just, they're doing everything what they're supposed to be doing. and it's just the way I look at it is, it's like highly, highly responsible drug use, which, I think is fair. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to do that, but, on some level, it's, we have, we would rather somebody be employed and a responsible drug user than like some unemployed loser that is not. And maybe that's just, the circles that I run in tend to thinking that way. But it's funny to me to at least think that like, well, I don't care if you're an alcoholic or a meth head, as long as you're like, you got a job and it's, you're paying the bills on time and like no one cares. It's like, well, yeah, the moment like you're not, it doesn't matter whether or not like what drugs you need to get through the day, as long as you know people think you're doing all right. It's just it's ridiculous because I see, and these are often not like younger people. Younger people generally get a pass for a lot of this stuff. It's not. I'm not talking about anyone who's 20 and drinks on the weekends. That's different. But I mean, like if there's like beer cans in the bed of your pickup truck, like that to me, signifies a little level of degeneracy that's would be very, very concerning if you were unemployed. But if you were, if you're VP of the company, then it's like you just like to have fun. It's like that's an interesting way to kind of put things into perspective. Um, and I don't know, as being someone who's more absolute on those moral stances is hard for me. I obviously don't agree with that analysis, but I guess I'm not a drug user or highly successful, so I have no, I don't get to speak on any of that, I suppose. But anyway, I just think it's funny to think about how rampant drug use is, even by people that are, I'll say socially successful in the sense that no one bats an eye looking at them, but they might be on a plethora of drugs so long as they're functioning properly. Maybe that's the whole like shtick of modern remedies of health is that all right, well, we don't really care what we have to put you on so long as like you're doing normal stuff. Like we don't really care. So long as it's I guess you're doing what people expect of you and you're not maybe actively bothering people. You can be passively bothering people. Surely there's people at workspaces that either on medication or need to be on it or are on the wrong shit that are a nuisance in that setting, but nonetheless they're still employed and they're still doing all the things that they're not doing anything illegal per se. It's just they're doing a lot of stuff that isn't probably good for them, but or people around them. But it's they're not to the point where it's like anyone's gonna say anything yet. They're not going to. So I just think it's interesting. Highly responsible drug users. Um, I was just also thinking about just like the spam emails that people get. So these are everyone gets like thousands of these all the time, and most of them are so easy to sniff through. It's not even. I mean, it's hard to even call these like. I don't even know what the point of these are, but I was thinking about it, and I'm like, maybe their whole target demographic are people just with schizophrenia who are maybe they are having dreams of some kind, and schizophrenia is almost like I'm not sure exactly what happens in the brain, but there's almost just too much going on, and they just kind of think themselves into a frenzy of some you know some falsehood that somehow is it's just disconnected with reality. But nonetheless, these emails are based on these premises that are nothing short of just fucking ridiculous. So the only person who could ever conceivably believe anything that's being said in this email is somebody who's having trouble connecting with reality. It's like if you think that NASA is secretly a deep state organization that is I don't know is in cahoots with the Russian government or something, you might fall for like some Nigerian scammer thing because it's like, well, that would make sense if the Nigerian prince is reaching out to me because it's like, and it's always like, well, if you're a schizophrenic, why are you important to the story ever? It's like, you're not, why are you involved in whatever, like, if God is coming back, you must think you're special because why are you getting this information, not like no one else has it? Wouldn't that kind of be a tip off that, okay, maybe I'm just making shit up? So maybe it's just like, if you are schizophrenic, it needs to be like, maybe that's the whole thing is like one of their fixed false beliefs are that they are special in some way. But like, why would the CIA be telling you anything? Who the fuck are you? It's like, look, think about who you are right now. You're unemployed or whatever. You're a highly responsible drug user. Why do you need to be aware of, like, why are you the messenger of all this? It's like, do you really think that you're that special? And maybe I just don't think I'm special enough, or at least don't live in a way that says that. But it would just never occur to me that, like, if there was some secret message about the world or governments or some shadow organization, like, why would I get that message of all people? Really, they'd give that to me? They'd entrust me with that information? That seems stupid. I'm not even, I'm quiet most of the time. I don't really have much to say. It's not like people are listening to me or they, are really always attentively listening to what I'm saying. Why don't they, why wouldn't they tell somebody who's, makes a living talking about to other people that are important? I mean, I guess I don't make a living doing this, obviously, but I still do. But, why not tell a journalist or something? They would be, they'd probably appreciate and really have the ability to even get that out there. But a meth head in Kansas, why would you know what's going on with the shadow government or something? I don't know. It's just funny to me that and thinking of the spam emails that they're trying to find the right balance of schizophrenia and urgency to get the right people to give money or something. But it's kind of a bullshit demographic to target. Schizophrenics, it's punching down, but I don't know. I guess I think they're that special. It's punching up. Already got to go to my list here because my mind is quite foggy. I was thinking about just like the world becoming increasingly antisocial, and I've spoken, to some degrees about this before about the issues and things that come with people spending more time and just not having the same third places and other social institutions and things to lean on and all this other stuff, and obviously I'm on the side of like kind of return back. We need to kind of go backwards. So like in terms of how we're moving, like the progress that we've I'll put progress in quotes there. The motion that we've had in the past couple decades has been more towards using technology toward antisocial ends. And my immediate and overarching direction that I am advocating for us going is the opposite direction. So back to where there's more in-person stuff. There's more sense of community, some cohesion. I'm not saying that is likely to happen or anything, but if I were designing the whole Sims universe that we're in right now, that would be the direction I would be putting my dollars towards, or my emeralds, or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. But on the other side of that, I do at least sympathize with why people are becoming increasingly antisocial. Not because it's like, well, it's easier and technology's making everything worse. Like talking to normal people, and I maybe this is just kind of ironic coming from me at least, but it's just fucking boring as shit. Everybody is so like boring or just stupid that it's hard to even. They're not even attempting to do anything interesting. It's not like it'd be one thing if everyone had, and not everyone has a story, but most of the time the stories are like it's never. They always just do the most predictable thing in the story. So even unless something crazy happens to them, where it's like, a crackhead pulled his dick out on the subway, it's like, what'd you do? And it's like, well, I screamed and ran out of the subway. It's like, I'm not expecting you to like, beat the guy over the head or to have done anything different than that. But like, the crazy part of that isn't that you did anything or that you did anything that had to do with it, make that story interesting. You did the most predictable thing that there was, which I'm not faulting you for, but nonetheless, that's there. But even in their whole life, it's not like they ever like, well, I decided to do this, and then this happened, and then like I kind of switched directions. It's just they're just very boring people. And like you ask, like, well, okay, what do you do? I guess, for work or for. Do you have any interesting hobbies? They're like, well, yeah, I collect vinyl records. And it's like, all right, well, you and 80,000 other people, and there's a group of us that all collect them. It's like, okay, well, I don't really get that, and I guess that's interesting to them. But the early CDs of Paul, I don't know these people, so it doesn't mean anything to me. But I guess it's interesting in the sense that it's, I guess, different enough. But to me, that also isn't really like a unique thing. I think a unique thing needs to be like there can't be a small group of Redditors that are all doing a unique thing. A unique thing needs to be like no one else is fucking doing this shit. Like, and not to defend like highly autistic people doing antisocial stuff, but like somebody collecting, years of fucking belly button lint or something in jars. I mean, maybe people do that. I hope not, but that's at least like 1 in a million, or at least 1 in a billion. Like, there's not that many people doing that. I guess 1 in a million is still still a Reddit community, but I mean like 1 in a billion. There needs to be like less than 10 people doing whatever it is the fuck that you're doing, or at least the combination of which, and I don't know, maybe it's just I'm too fixated on trying to not be like a boring person to talk to. I just think that because you spend so much of your life just kind of meeting other people and talking about yourself and asking about what they do, it's like you always want to have at least something interesting to be talking about. And whether that be like the ability to tell funny stories or to make things funny, which is something that I've been trying to do, is to embrace more comedy. As bad as I'm doing at that, it's still something that I at least acknowledge as being, a potentially interesting avenue to be going down things, is seeing, okay, how is this funny at least? And maybe if I haven't done anything interesting, I can still make something mundane funny, right? I can, find the funny thing about, the boring Star Wars fan club that you're in, because the Star Wars fan club itself is absolutely not of interest to me at all, and there's absolutely nothing that I could do or say to make that interesting. But if I made it funny, that at least could make it palatable for me. And that's maybe just one of my uh, life philosophies is either to get and I view philosophy, in whatever word that means, in comedy in a similar light, in the sense that it almost has to abstract or trivialize something in order to be able to understand or digest it. And some people have different ways of analyzing the world and living it. Some people just kind of, choose and shadow themselves in a veil of ignorance of some kind, where it's like that is what protects them from, there's what helps them sleep at night or what helps them get through their things. And some people, collect Beanie Babies or whatever. That can be their way of, acknowledging, or to deal with the uncertainties of the world and whatever. And other people, analyze it and think about it and let it boil up in sadness or whatever. And other people just laugh about it and try to, come up with whatever's funny about it. And I don't think that's any less real or less authentic of a way to, to digest, what life is or what the world is, because it is, life is quite of an it's a weird and interesting thing to be just kind of given this, maybe not the life itself, but like, I'll say complex consciousness. And you can attempt to not be complex and then just kind of dumb yourself down and be an animal. But, because animals themselves don't have this like ability to self-reflect and to, or at least this illusion of autonomy. And even if autonomy doesn't truly exist, like people don't, have any control over what they do and things truly are all deterministic, which I don't agree with at all philosophically. I don't think that is, the way that the world works. Nonetheless, it's like we still have this illusion of it. We still have the idea that we still think that at least that we can, achieve some difference. Otherwise, then what the fuck are you doing? Like, there is no point in being alive if you really don't believe in the free will. I never understand these free will. Maybe it's just people that just want to be like smart or different. Or Neil deGrasse Tyson is sitting there saying, well, it's actually free will is actually stupid because it's like everything we're going to do is already. It's like, no, that's such a stupid way. Even if you really think that was the case, first of all, how the fuck would you know? You're God, and well, based on my empirical evidence, your empirical evidence is stupid. All right, like, all these facts that are supposed to be fact. A fact is only, a fact in as much as it's believed by the author. Because you can always just go deeper and deeper into the sources. I'm not saying that we can't make things. There isn't like some relativity to things being objective, but the idea that like there's some idea of absolute truthhood or some notion of like perfect truth is moronic. It's like, no, it's like this is compelling, sure, based off of all of our scientific principles and based off who's telling me this and based off of the, how this information or data was gathered. You can't argue with the data. Yes, I can, because, the way that the data being collected in the first place is the first source of being biased. Like, okay, you collected this data, but what data did you not collect? That might be just as telling as what you did collect. So I can't just, take it for the fact that you collected data on something for it to be meaningful. Because again, what didn't you collect? There's perhaps a lot more. That's even more of a story. You don't know. And ultimately, people don't like going into down big arguments about that, and I understand. But at the same time, it's no less valid. You can't, criticize me for at least not applying this sense of like perfect truth to something when so clearly that doesn't exist. Um, all that to say, it doesn't mean to, I forgot even what I begun with this. Yeah, so I don't know. I agree that people should generally try to be less, the antisocial movement is concerning, at least for the future of our humanity. Maybe some people, embrace this like techno future where there is no humanity does kind of end, as we know it. And that would be a sad day. And I think there's, and I would be on the side of saying that there's more arguments in favor of humanity than against. Because it's all about trade-offs. All right, humanity ends, according to Peter Thiel's vision of whatever the fuck, because he's a weirdo. But humanity ends, and then like in lieu of what? What are we replacing humanity with? Robots. All right, who is designing these robots? Who gets to make them? Those are feats of engineering. That's not God inventing a new species. It's not like chimpanzees also developed intelligence and are now better than us. It's not like we're losing out to some comparable. We made the robots. It's like to act like we couldn't control them is hilarious. Like we can, and like if we control them to then phase us out of existence, that would still be our decision to make, which is what I would argue is a moronic decision. I don't care if humans are unpredictable and they're difficult and they're not quantitative in the way that they, act. It's like, I understand, but did you forget why we wanted to quantify anything in the first place? Like the reason that science and all this stuff caught on, and that people are like interested in quantifying things because it made it reduced the chaos within our world. And any artist will tell you that the chaos is what kind of brings any beauty into the world. The reason that we're here is because of this, a chaotic system of biology that created us. So the idea that we need to like rid the world of chaos and everything needs to be deterministic is retarded, in my opinion. That's stupid. It's like then you're kind of ridding anything that's the only meaningful aspect, of our experience. It's also it's the fucked up part. It's like, why does the kid get brain cancer? Again, I'm not saying that part of the chaos is good, and I know that makes you sad, but also every other good part, like any musician or any person, anything that you've ever appreciated, the stupid fiber smoothie you drink every day, your athletic greens, all that shit too is also born from chaos. Is born from maybe it was the father of the kid with brain cancer. You don't fucking know. But it's like you don't, the life giveth and life taketh away. So to act like you can, you get to like somehow keep all the good stuff, with robots. They'll help us keep the good stuff, and like the bad stuff will go. It's like that is such a stupid idea. Like it's just not. They just don't think about it. I don't think people even bother spending 5 seconds thinking about anything, and they just, well, you're getting caught up in the semantics of the philosophy thing. That's the whole fucking thing. The reason anyone does anything ever or values anything for any reason ever is because of a philosophical reason. Now you can call it something different. You can call it, their value system or their judgments or their morals. I don't give a fuck what you call it. I'm calling it a philosophy. Regardless, that's the only reason anything is valuable at all, or that human like that's the whole reason we value life over death. All right, that is still a philosophical judgment. And like to act like that doesn't exist, or there's some other like that is not the reason why things are valuable is silly to me. I don't know. I can't really finish that thought right now, but it'll all come back to me. Like I said, I'm a little all over the place today. I feel like there's not enough blood getting into my body. I feel like the blood that is getting in my body is not being cycled properly. I don't know. My hands and feet are all cold or blue. So that's obviously something's not getting in my brain. So, my thoughts kind of end at abrupt sentences, and I'm having trouble finishing things. But, I don't know. Life goes on. This is kind of the, maybe it's the beginning of schizophrenia. That's really what this is. It's not even, maybe it's all an illusion in my head, and I'm somehow special. If this is being special, then I prefer not to. Give me my, blood flow back. Anyway, the other thing I was just thinking about aspirations and dreams of people, because we all have our own little aspirations and dreams, whether we want to, admit it or not. And that it's like I mentioned this last time, but it's kind of the sad reality is a lot of kids grew up with dreams, and they were told like as they were kids, they're like, oh, have dreams, like aspire and do them. And like many kids now just are very, they're just kind of empty of those dreams, and it's not really their fault either. It's just that either the world itself, like they've kind of become too serious about the world and kind of think that the stuff that they see is true. I don't know. They take the things that they see too literal and let that kind of haunt them. Or it's just other people that are telling them like why everything they're trying to do is stupid. And like I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I am capable, and so is other people, better than me even, of trivializing anything to the point where it becomes unbelievably stupid and pointless. It's like this can include living in general. I can trivialize that and make that sound stupid. I can your dreams, your aspirations, and it's almost just like I'm not saying that people need to dream. People need to have those dreams. It keeps people going. It keeps people trying stuff. And I'm not saying people don't need to shit on people's dreams too. That's also part of like that's part of the rite of passage is in order for you to achieve your dreams, part of it is you shitting on other people's dreams or something, some variance of that. But regardless, like I think the life well lived is like dying for your dreams. Whatever it is your dream is like killing you. So it's, and maybe people kind of try to project their dreams onto other people in the sense that it's like, well, everyone should die at 85 in a nursing home around friends and family. It's like, all right, well, that maybe be like a very stereotypical like dream death. But maybe some person like this dreams all to fly a helicopter, and he does this whole work. He goes to military school, does this. He's finally getting there flying helicopters. Maybe some setbacks, divorce, whatever. He gets some more setbacks, but his dream is still to fly those helicopters, whatever. and then he's flying the helicopters, and then he crashes and dies. You know what? There's something kind of beautiful about that whole, that kind of half-assed story I just told. The dream he had is what killed him, and I think that is honestly the best way you can die is if whatever your dream is, it ends up being what kills you, or what you do. And some people's dreams don't involve dying. I'm not saying everyone has to do a high-risk dream, like flying helicopters, but I don't know, if you're a comedian, you tell a joke and you have a heart attack and die because you're laughing too hard. Like that to me is like, if I were ever some kind of successful comedian, I would hope that the way I die would be laughing to a joke. How much more perfect and prophetic that would be. I'm dying, that's my dream. That's the way I'm like, yes, I know it'd be nice and cute and you could make a story if I died in the hospital and I love my family and whatever. But no, I think, even early, it doesn't matter if you died at 45. It's like you can still die early. You died, your dream killed you. And that, I think, is the beautiful, is a beautiful end to a story. And I think that is really what people should aspire. It's not to die, I'm not saying, but, if you're, to put yourself in a position where your dream might kill you, right? It's like if you're, a comedian, you want to die laughing, then you got to find people that make you laugh or something that makes you laugh. Not that you will die from it, but, at least have a chance of getting killed by your dream. That could be the thing, I don't know. Maybe this isn't applicable to other professions and careers. And I'm not saying I, hope I die, but, getting killed by your dreams is one, in my opinion, one quite beautiful way to go out. And maybe should be, people shouldn't have to adopt the same, and maybe your life, you do have the boring dream. And it's like, yes, I want to have, I want, my grandson to, I don't know, be there and everyone be happy and sad or, celebrate my life or something. And that's beautiful. Many people die that way, and that's great. But, if you are a bit of nonconformist and you have other, ambitions and things, don't feel like it's crazy if you let your dream kill you. Don't do it on purpose, obviously. I'm not saying to purposely fly a helicopter in the ground, but there's something ironic. I struggle to believe the universe doesn't have some sense of humor or irony because of just how everything, it seems to work out that way. And maybe I'm just looking for patterns that don't exist, and that's kind of the whole human experience, is just looking for patterns in nowhere, and then all of a sudden, like, we see things and think we figure things out, but then the deeper we look in, the less sense it makes. And it's like, I was reading this, and this is a side, but I'm reading this book right now, and I took a break from it a bit, but I'm coming back to it now. But it's called The Weirdness of the World. It's by some, California dude. And ironic, he's not dead yet, but, which makes it, a little bit harder for me to read the book, only because I've said before with book authors, the longer they've been dead, the better. Meaning that the more true, the more lasting, the more prophetic I think their insights, the longer they've been dead. This guy's not dead yet, but maybe he'll be dead by the time I read the book. And maybe he's dead. He died writing the book. I don't know. If that's his dream. Anyway, it's called The Weirdness of the World, and it is interesting to me, is he's basically arguing that, that like any, you could say like philosophical theory or scientific theory or any theory of the universe, anything that explains consciousness or even defines it or really does anything that approaches metaphysics, really. Any kind of metaphysics tangential theory all becomes like just weird at some point where it just doesn't really make any fucking sense. And like, yes, like that sounds like a nothing burger. It's like, what does weird mean? It's like, well, quantum physics surely isn't weird to Stephen Hawking, who, invented all the words and the nomenclature and stuff like that. But like to any normal person, like even if, and most people just maybe don't think they're smart enough to like understand what quantum physics is or, quantum mechanics. And well, if you understood it, it wouldn't be weird to you. But it's like, no, it is fucking weird. It's like, I understand it well enough, at least. Like, I mean, I understand it on some vague conceptual level, maybe obviously not like enough to, teach a class or diagram about it or solve anything. But like, there's quarks and there's these weird, like, it's all these nanoparticles, there's antiparticles and particles. And it's like, we can only observe these things through like, like 10 different proxies of the thing itself. It's like, we can't actually see this because it's actually too small for light to be observable. But we know it's there because of like these three other things that we saw that like we then deduced that there's something called these antiparticles. It's like, listen, you sound like a fucking nut job. Now, I know that you're staring into, billions of dollars of equipment and so you don't, no one's going to laugh at you. But regardless, like, I agree with this, Eric, author, this Weirdness of the World guy. That's fucking weird as shit. That doesn't make any sense. Quarks and antiparticles, dark matter and matter. It's like, you sound like it's like a Batman villain making shit up. Like, are you a comic book author or are you a scientist? It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Uh, but nonetheless, it's like, yeah, if you any theory once you get it, deep enough, ends up becoming just fucking bizarre and like just doesn't make any fucking sense. It almost seems like you're just making it all up. Uh, which on some level is kind of what it is, And it's like I saw this one quote where it's like, um, let me see if I can pull it up. It's about like, yeah, I don't want to butcher it, so I'm not gonna butcher it. Here's the quote. Uh, Truth can never be told so as to be understood and not be believed. Basically, saying that like anything that eventually becomes some kind of uh, truth itself or some kind of like true statement or some objective fact about the universe or reality, eventually just be like, all right, people believe it enough. Right? It's just kind of some kind of lie that we were all just kind of bought into believing, X, Y, and Z. And like truth about, in the old times, this was truth about, the Christian God or the Muslim God or whatever religion was popular at the time. And now, like, because we've graduated to like, atheism being all cool and shit. And you're like, God's dead. Like, what a loser. He had long hair. Whatever the fuck people are like, joking God about or something. But now it's like, now we think that we're like somehow beyond like what are otherwise goofy interpretations of the world. Like, if you're truly an atheist and think that like any kind of God or extra spiritual being exists, like, then all right, then fine. You believe in the quarks and the antiparticles. Now, I'm not saying those things don't exist, but you think like, who named them quarks and antiparticles? Like, who, dark matter versus matter? It's like, even the concept of matter is confusing, different than mass. Yes, it's relative to gravity, and we could, talk about semantics all the time. And sure, I'm sure that you understand it well enough that like, it all makes sense to you because you're smart. But like, all right, then fine. Like, why can't you figure everything out? Like, why can't you cure cancer? It's like, well, there's, we still need to work on it a little bit longer. It's like, all right, well, that almost sounds like you're just kind of waiting for some God to bail you out or some other person to come up with. It's like, it's not that like antiparticles are the reason people have cancer. Clearly, there's something on a more chemical level that we're missing. So it's like, all right, if we understand antiparticles and shit so well, how come we can't figure out like fucking basic chemistry? Because then you get to like the conspiracy level territory where it's like, well, we could, but like the government doesn't want us to like cure cancer, man. I don't know what the fuck people. Everyone has like anybody who is dead set on any kind of belief system, anyone who's I think the ultimate flaw in any kind of metaphysical belief is confidence. If you are uberly confident, whatever your metaphysical, you know, description of the world is, I think you're a moron because it's like, honestly, the only rational and like intelligent, true, understand, like acceptance to have is like, well, to be honest, I don't fucking know, and it might be convenient or helpful for me to believe this at this time, but if I'm being honest, that's a fucking guess. I have no confidence in my answer whatsoever. And people think that's like, well, you're being weak, and you're like, you're giving up. And it's like, I'm not. I don't want to give up and be weak, and accept that I don't know what's going on. It's like, well, I don't think it is being weak. I think that is the prudent move, is to kind of embrace the ignorance there and not. And yes, I realize that kind of gives you less power, and you're not able to like, give definitive answers to things, and you have to just be comfortable just saying, well, I don't fucking know. It's not for me to know. I almost like it. I almost love, thinking it's like, well, that's just God shit, bro. It's like, yeah, and maybe not Christian God shit. It's just God shit. It's like, it's divine stuff that I ain't supposed to know about. And it's just like, I know that sounds like I'm being pathetic and like, well, I'm just like, I'm bowing down. I'm not praising anybody. I'm just saying that's not for me to understand. Clearly, whatever it is, I was not bestowed with whatever. And maybe you think you're special and you were bestowed with gifts to be able to understand all this shit or, to solve the mysteries of the universe. It's like, well, no, I think there's any gift that I've been given, it's to know that it ain't me that's gonna figure this shit out, and it's not gonna be you either. You're just some dude who's more confident than me, and like, sure, I could start a grift and start a new religion and be like, well, I figure it all out. Actually, it's actually not the antiparticles; it's these other macro particles, and like this, I could accept a sociologist or a psychologist spin on the whole thing. Everyone's got their own little spin on things, and I'm not saying that people who spend time crafting these series are wasting their time. Not at all. A lot of times it is interesting, and there is some practicality that comes out of it. Like even people that did things that are closer to pseudoscience, Jung and Freud and things like that. Their worldviews were all bizarre and kind of chalked up in these weird, like psychological things. And there's still a lot of value that comes out of that. But I think to kind of impose and say that like you're so confident, so smart, and because of your philosophy or whatever that you've come up with, I think that's moronic. I think you need anybody who knows shit or is at all like what I would consider intelligent humility should be the number one thing to embrace. It's like, dude, I don't know. This is might be one dimension or one aspect of something, like, or this is one small pattern that I might have noticed that might have significance. I'm not saying anything at all. Any new terminology I'm introducing is simply, what I can just try to represent a new phenomenon with. It's not any kind of dictation that this is the way the world works. I think people kind of turn that the other way around. They're like, well, since I'm so humble, I need to accept what other people are saying. It's like, no, realize that anything that anyone's ever told you is made up. Now, that sounds like you try to dismiss everything, but that doesn't mean you need to reason on your own from zero. It's like you can still accept what other people say and use it to your advantage, and still kind of accept that chemistry exists, chemicals do function in this way, like, things interact and things happen. That's not fake. That's real. I understand. Yes, I'll take an antibiotic. I'm not going to die of bubonic plague because I'm an idiot. But at the same time, realize that it's like, all right, this is not like an answer from the universe. This is simply a helpful framework that in this context is helpful. It doesn't mean that like I don't ever have to or I could use this to solve any other problem. It's like, different problems require different solutions. I'm not saying anything spectacular there, but like clearly if you're having a, physiological issue, chemistry is probably helpful. Maybe even some physics could be helpful. Even like some macronutrient like diet stuff is helpful. Like, sure, those degrees of science are helpful in that context, but like, why is it that I want this, and what is the meaning of life? Chemistry is not helpful, and that's not the tool you need to bust out. I think people they're like, well, chemistry's been so helpful and medicine's been so helpful for people that like maybe it should answer all the philosophical questions too. And I'm just kind of on the side of like, no, look, philosophy has had its own like nomenclature and its own way of dealing with, those questions. Don't bring your tools into this garden, right? Like that, the garden of chemistry is for chemical questions and for chemical quandaries and for understanding the mysteries of chemistry. But like, why am I alive is not a chemical question. Like maybe there's a chemical justification, but that's not where the question is coming from. That's not the nature of the question. It's not, well, I'm curious about like my chemical makeup. Like that's a chemical question. But like, why am I alive? What should I do in my time on the planet? That's a question for philosophy, not for chemistry or for physics. And I think people are just so part of the reason that things are so depressing and nihilistic with younger people is that they're kind of told, and maybe they just kind of assume that like, well, the answer's got to be this, it's got to be a chemical answer, right? It's like, well, everything is chemistry, and I've been taught that like there's kind of this materialistic reductionist answer to everything, where it's like, no, I think especially a lot of those more difficult questions of like metaphysics, what do I do with my life? Like, what's the purpose of this? Or like, why am I this way? Or what's wrong with me? Like those are much more psychological, sociological, philosophical questions that you need to use those tools to answer. Like you don't want to be reading, I wish I could name a biologist or something. You don't want to read, Hawking if you're, questions about metaphysics, which I'll even say Hawking as a physicist did have, I'll say, kind of philosophical adjacent viewpoints on this, where he used God a lot as kind of a lean on, where he was just like, I don't know, maybe God has an answer. Like he has a hard time believing that there wasn't a God. Like if you read Hawking, he wasn't like he was some strict empiricist or some strict, atheist. He's probably, I think he referred to himself as an agnostic, which again would meet my criteria of just embracing humility as kind of your answer of choice. Like especially if you're not, unless you're hell bent on something. If the Christian religion is really your thing and it's just like speaks to you on some divine level, then you know what, you go for that. Like you don't. I'm more so speaking to the atheist crowd here that takes offense to anybody who has. And I don't like religions, especially like any religion that you really get bought into and buy. I have absolutely no problem with that. I think people need, like, that's almost a requirement for like a fulfilling life, is to have some kind of quasi-religious thing. I think maybe my argument here is then that like I think science as a religion is not a satisfying religion for people, and that's kind of been a failed experiment, in the West here, as people have tried to adopt scientific perspectives as answers to philosophical questions, whereas the church always answered those questions. You'd never listen to a scientist to ask, why should I get out of bed in the morning? I don't want to move. Whereas like that might be a question for a doctor, yes, but like if assuming you're fine, it's like why do I want to do any of this? Like what's wrong with me? Whereas now people are just like, well, I need some chemical answer, like that'll solve my problems. Or it's like it doesn't. Like they just move on from one thing to the next. You fall for one grift, you buy a workout class from some guy with a beard who's bald. It's like that is not the answer to your problems. Like you're kind of you're asking the wrong people. Like you're asking the right questions, but you're asking them to the wrong people. A fitness influencer is not the reason why you've been divorced 3 times. Like that, you're asking the wrong people with this. Or don't ask a chemistry professor a philosophy question, right? Like keep it in there. And if you are so fortunate to as to be, the proverbial chemistry professor in this situation, you're not a philosopher. Unless you dabble, then give them a philosophical answer, but don't give them a chemical answer to a philosophical question. It's like we need to understand what the context is here. And religion has always been this kind of arm, this greater arm of philosophy. And maybe people see philosophy as this kind of rationalist religion, but I don't know a single philosopher that wasn't in some way, or at least didn't sound like a religious zealot of some kind. Even Nietzsche was talking about how, like it wasn't like he was just kind of pissed off at God. It sounded like he spoke of God a lot. It wasn't like he didn't think there was a God or that he didn't exist. He was just pissed off at him. That was more of his shtick, but he certainly had, it wouldn't shock you if he was sounded very religious. And it did, really. Anyway, I forgot what got me started on that whole tangent. Oh yeah, it's like I was dying for your dreams is where I started, but ended with philosophy and religion. But I don't know why philosophy itself just keeps coming back to me. Maybe it's just that I'm just kind of bothered because I think I'm around people that are so. The society now is so it's all sterile, and things that are that used to be maybe more appreciated because of their philosophical beauty now is reduced to kind of this like cold, dead, rational. And maybe it's just because I'm too close to, technology and that dimension of things. Like I think if I was maybe around different people or working with different things, I wouldn't think so much about why technology bothers me so much. And it never bothers me on any kind of, it's always the implication, which I think people that are really technologists don't really get. It's not the technology itself; it's the implications. It's the second, third order effects that come. And if you're not somebody that really is bothered by those second order and third order effects, it's like, well, you're just like fear mongering. It's just like, well, you're just like kind of extrapolating things that aren't there yet. And it's like, well, somebody's got to do that, and that's what I'm doing. It's not. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not saying that life's going to be over, but if you have idiots like Peter Thiel saying the human race shouldn't exist, it begins to make you think a little bit. And so that's just all there's something I kind of keep falling back on. Although I wish I related to it in a more comedic way. I feel like this is often far too serious for the topics being somewhat ridiculous. And maybe that's another kind of thing that I've landed on. I don't really, well, this might have sounded serious. It was also kind of, not satire in nature, but at least, at the very least, trivializing of life in nature, in the sense that I don't know that somebody can be. It does no good to run around with a gun in my mouth all the time, sad about different stuff that happens. Like I know there's pain and suffering everywhere, but like I don't. What do you mean to do about that? I don't. I think the more, even rational thing to do would be to find some way to make it digestible. And if therapy is how you digest the world, and like you need to talk to someone with a degree and can reference you to YouTube clips and channels or whatever to motivate you or whatever. If that's how you get out of bed in the morning, then again, more power to you. Do what works for you. I think it's weird, but whatever. But ultimately, that's not how I relate to the world. I find no solace in talking to somebody and being all serious about this, as if it's like, if it isn't all just some kind of cosmic joke. Which kind of is one of my oldest little abstractions on consciousness, is that it's just some giant divine like prank, where it's like, imagine we just gave these monkeys powers to think and reason and stuff like that, and see what kind of dumbass shit they'd come up with. It'd just be entertaining, I think, for whatever creator. It'd be like, well, let's watch this go off the rails. How long? And they're kind of up there taking bets on how long before we nuke ourselves to oblivion. Which is, I guess, one way to think about consciousness. Or you can think about it as some serious. You can think about it as some gift from God, where it's like, well, it seems like he didn't really plan it out that much. He kind of gifted an 8-year-old a table saw, and he's now like kind of watching the 8-year-old saw his hand off. And it makes more sense to me to at least think of it more as a joke. It's like, watch this. I'm gonna give Billy a fucking handsaw for his birthday. I wonder how long it's gonna take for that to go off the rails. That to me is a more, at least more refreshing way to think about human consciousness than like, oh, we're ruining the gift. It's like, I don't. Does this really seem like a gift that much? And we're fucking around a lot. It doesn't seem like this is quite the gift. And maybe this is just a call for people who, can see the best. And I even, it's like the other thing is I don't know that like there's like this evil faction and this good faction of people that are kind of like battling against each other, and then like, but you're part of the good team. You got to like defeat evil. It's like nobody is good or bad. I kind of reject this like, this perfect dichotomy. And like you can do. I'm not saying there are like better and worse actions. There are like intelligent and stupid and helpless like things that you can do. I'm not saying that those don't exist, but like I don't know that we can point to a person or people or even just like an action itself and say point blank that this is evil. Like I don't know that even exists at all. Like same with good or anything. And I think it's just that even the idea that like there is some good and evil, and we have to fight, and there has to be some big battle, and we have to win, and like I don't know that even is the way it works either. Like I think people just have different ideas on things, and you're ultimately like they're both just like opinions. And it's just like, all right, well, this is the opinion. Even if your opinion like doesn't sound as nice as someone else, it's like, yeah, like I got to bring up Hitler again. Hitler's opinion was that like there was a master race, and that we needed to, I don't even know, unite Germany to do something about it. I don't really get his opinion. And sure, that's why people think he's evil. It's like his opinion wasn't very compelling to people outside of his little in group. And so then you could say like, well, exclusionary philosophies and opinions, those are like the evil ones, the ones that exclude people. Well, tell me which one doesn't. Like, fine. Like I've even made this argument before where it's like truly tolerant people would have to, by definition, be tolerant of Nazis. So like if you were a tolerant person who like accepted everyone for who they are, you'd have to accept Nazis because otherwise you're not tolerant. Like, do you not get that line of reasoning? You can't be a tolerant person and not tolerate Nazis. And again, I know you don't want to. It's like, well, we only tolerate other people who are tolerant. All right, well then you've now created an exclusionary group because people that aren't tolerant are now not tolerated by you. Therefore, they also feel justified to not tolerate black people or whoever it is that Nazis really don't tolerate. So it's like every kind of group and thinking and it's all exclusionary in some way. Sometimes they divide it up based off of country. Sometimes it's like, well, my country, we need to be like my country is the best one, so we need to like do that. Like all it needs based on country. Sometimes it's on race. Sometimes it's about money. Sometimes it's like, well, I don't care as long as you got the money. Like these are all also exclusionary philosophies. Like you can't pretend that like one, and like yeah, obviously there'd be one that's like super tied to merit and like the best one wins, or like of course merit in some whether like subjective sense. It's like it wouldn't be merit in terms of how tall you are, because then that's like a genetic thing. And it's like, all right, well, that's fucked up because you can't control it. It's like, all right, well, then it's merit based off of like the skills that you have. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of also still genetic. So you still kind of sound like a Nazi talking about, people being more capable than other people. Then it's like, all right, well, then it's based off of like skills that you had developed. It's like, well, still, people can still be genetically dispositioned to be better at certain things than others. But then it's also like skills that you might value or not value. There are skills that you don't value. What if I had the skill of doing a handstand for 40 hours? It's like, if that's not valuable in this economy or in this world, then I'm seen as this underclass of human, and you're excluding me from whatever your future is. Because that's really all it is good and bad are just different opinions on things. And I'm not saying that like there isn't ones that I would support and ones that I think are better in general, but they're all exclusionary. That's kind of by nature, they have to be excluding some people. Not everyone can fit in. And yeah, I'm not saying that like we need to defend Nazism or like, but like truly there isn't like any kind of order, organizing or cohesive or community-based ideology is exclusionary. Somebody's in and somebody's out, and you can make arguments about why the people that you're including are better and why the people you're excluding shouldn't be there, but at the end of the day you're still kicking people out of the group, and it doesn't, maybe it's you, maybe it's not. So it's like, do you really fault somebody who like they're kicking you out of the group? Like let's say they made a group that was like, all right, anybody except for Minecraft YouTubers. It's like, I'm not siding with them. Like they're kicking me out. And it's like, well, I have to be sadistic to say like, yeah, I shouldn't be in the group. Yeah, I hate myself. It's like, no, even like a survival instinct would tell me, it's like, well, no, I want to be on the inside of this group, whatever it is. It's like the group could be all of humanity minus Minecraft YouTubers. And I'd still have to be in that minority saying, hey guys, like, no, we're valuable. Like, here's why we should include Minecraft YouTube. It's like your philosophy is still excluding somebody. It has to, by definition. You can't, like, including everybody also includes the people that you don't like, right? Like, clearly there's someone you don't like. If everyone liked everybody, like, what do you think that world would look like? Right? You think it would look like what it is now? Like, no, it wouldn't. It also wouldn't look like, the Republican or Democratic Party. That's not what people getting along looks like, ever. Like, if that is, then get me out of there. I don't know what the fuck they're on. But anyway, I'll wrap it up there for this time. I do feel like more blood has gotten flowing once I kind of got fired up about something. Maybe that's kind of the thing here is I need to increase my blood pressure. I tried actually inverting myself, like hanging upside down for a few minutes, thinking I could get some blood to my head. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm trying these things, and we'll see if this works. But anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.